Hello, I'd like to talk about aliases. Aliases are shortcuts on the command line that you can define for yourself. They're typically used to define short versions of longer commands, and when used extensively, I find they increase my productivity quite a bit. As an example, we have the ls command. It shows what files are there. We also have ls-al, which shows this an extended version of it, shows us extended parameters about the files. Okay. So if we found ourselves typing ls-al quite a bit, we might want to create an alias to it. So to define an alias, do alias, then you give it the name. So in this case, L equals ls-al. There's our extended command. Cool. Now when we type L, we get ls-al. That's how you define an alias. To see the list of aliases that you've defined already, you can just type alias. As you can see, I've got quite a bit here. A lot of them are added by the ohmyzshell extensions. And a lot of them are ones I've defined myself. Some of my favorites are these ones right here, and I use them quite a bit to quickly jump up directories. So if you note on my command line, I am 3 directories up, so if I type 2 dots, I go up once, 3 dots, I go up twice. Now I'm in my home directory. Cool. Okay, let's look at another example. So if I'm in a Git repository, one of the most common things I type is git log. So maybe I want to create an alias to that. So alias glog equals git log. Let's try it again. That's not what I want. Now what happened there? The problem was that I did alias glog equals git log without quotes. If you do that, alias will just pick up on the first parameter. So we redefine it, try it again, success. So now we have these 2 aliases. We have glog and we also have L we've defined for ourselves. But they're not persisted across shell sessions, so if you open a new shell, you will not get these aliases. One way to fix that is to add them to your shell's run commands file, which are loaded on startup. This is, if you're using bash, this is typically .bashrc. If you're using zshell, this is typically .zshellrc, or zshrc. I like to use both. So we will store them in a common file so that they can be loaded by both the .zshrc and the .bashrc. My recommendation for this is the .aliasrc file. So let's edit that. Let's add our aliases. Alias L equals ls-al. Alias glog equals git log. You can go ahead and add as many as you want. Save and quit. Now these aren't loaded on default. We have to go and edit our shell's RC file and add those in. So I'm using zshell, so let's go edit my zshrc. Go to the end. Oops. So if we can read .aliasrc, then source.aliasrc. So whenever you open a new terminal, this file is run, and it'll try to read from your alias.rc file if it exists, and then it'll run it as well, and it'll add all of those aliases to your terminal session. So I'm using zshell. The difference for bash users here is that there's a semicolon, just like that. That's the only difference. So we can save and quit. Now that we know how to define aliases, you can go ahead and define some of your own. I find that if I go and define a ton of aliases all at once, I will probably only pick up on actually about maybe 3 or 4 of them, and I'll forget about the rest for a while. And if that happens, just periodically you can type alias and you can see all of the aliases you've defined. You just sort of skim them and see which ones are defined that you don't really use a lot. For example, rmdir. I don't use this rd alias very much, so I probably should. So I'm going to talk about analyzing your shell's command history to help you discover which aliases you should be defining. Both bash and zshell define the history command, which gives you the list of all of the commands you've previously entered. The number to the left here indicates what the index of the command, followed by the command itself. So by analyzing this file, you can figure out the most commonly executed commands you use throughout the course of your day. Commands in Z-Shell's history file are unique, which makes it a little bit more challenging to count how many times they're used, as each command will only have one entry. With Bash, this isn't the case, but it turns out that just taking account of the exact commands you type during the course of the day is not that useful. Typically, you want to look at only the first command, or the first command followed by the parameter. So if you look at the history, we want to look at maybe this, the first param, so alias, and maybe alias -- help, get a count of those commands, and maybe we can see if we can find some useful aliases there. So first we want to pass it through awk to print out the first column. Well, in this case it's actually the second column because our first column is the line number. Okay, so we can do that, or if we want to print the first two columns, we can do $2, $3. And using awk, that's exactly what this says. This says print the second column followed by the third column, and it'll automatically add a delimiter for you, which is just a simple space. Okay, so now we have the two columns. We want to see how many times each one happens. So we need to get a count of each line. So we can pass it through the unique filter, but before we do that, we need to sort the output. And if we say unique -c, then it'll actually give it a count of each of the lines. So we can see that, which RVM occurred once. So let's sort the output for that so we can see what happens the most. And if you do sort -n, it'll sort by numerical output first. So here we go. Here are my most used commands. So git checkout 458 times, git add, git push, git branch, lots of git commands. And it's also useful to just view the first column. So let's go and do that. See the output there. So now we can see almost 2,400, 2,500 times I've issued the git command. So I really should be using my G alias for that. There's also vim ack. A lot of these are pretty short, and then we can also see lots of aliases here. This here is an alias I've defined for bundle exec, which you get if you're doing lots of Ruby development. So now we can use these two lists to examine commands we issue quite often and think of new aliases that can help speed up our productivity on the command line. My recommendation is to maybe pick 3 or 4 of them and add them to your alias RC file, and review these histories periodically, maybe once every week or two, and slowly grow your alias RC file over time.